from what we said earlier. A non-Jew could do the same thing. That means a non-Jew can go out in the backyard, make an altar, offer a sacrifice the way they did it before the Mishkan was built. A non-Jew could do the exact same thing himself. Minahani Mili, how do we know that? Tanurban, because the rabbis taught, Yaber B'nai Yisrael, command the Jewish people not to slaughter outside the temple. B'nai Yisrael Matzuvim Al Shechutichutz. The Jewish people are commanded on, or implored from slaughtering outside. And non-Jews are not commanded on slaughtering outside. Therefore, kol echad ve'echad, each and every one, bonalo bama latzma, he can build his own altar, on bama, and makivela, and bring a carbon on it, kol mashi to whatever he wants. Amar Rabbi Yaakov bar Acha, Amar Rabbi Asi, asur l'sayan, you cannot help them. And you can't help them and be their agent. You can't do it for them. No, they can do it, but you can't, even if they're the ones sacrifice, you can't be part of it. Amar Rabba, but to give them the device to instruct them, that's okay. Like we find the Ifra Hormiz, that's the name of the person, the name person who's the Imei to Shmuel Malka, mother of Shmuel Malka was a king. Shadra Korbana LaRava, she sent a sacrifice to Rava. Shalchale, she sent it back to her. So she sent to him. I want you to bring this animal as a carbon Shem Shemayim. Amar Rav Safra. They said to Rav Safra, Rav Acha Bar Huna, and they enter Rav Acha Bar Huna. It says, Zilu, go, the Dabru Trey Olme Golai, and find the two non-Jewish lads. Yeah. They're all the same age because that's more chashuv that way. It's more impressive to have two people the same age. Achazu and see Heicha Damascus Yamasir, and go to a place where the right at the edge of the sea, so that it's a nice setting, right? Oh, that's the settlement, right? V'shaklu tzivi, and then take some stones, chati, brand new sticks, v'fiku nura b'marachata, and start a fire from a new shovel. They use brand new metal, everything new. It's a new dirt that's never been worked, new sticks that have never been worked, new shovel that's never been used to make the fire. And bring it up for her for the sake of heaven. So do everything by the book, the best way possible. Abai said to him, come on, what kind of which been Rabbi Elazar ben Shemua. Rabbi Elazar ben Shemua, the Tanya, it says in the Brayso, Rabbi Elazar ben Shemua Omer, Rabbi Elazar ben Shemua says, Ma mizbeach, what do we mean mizbeach? Shlo nishtamish bo hadiot, that there was no profane use or no mundane use of it that was ever done. Raf eitzim, so to the wood, shlo nishtamish bo hadit, cannot the wood you're using on the mizbeach cannot have had a mundane use. The motor Elazar ben Shemua b'bama, but Rabbi Elazar ben Shemua agrees that by Obama it's not a requirement. Tanya, it says in the Brayso. One verse says, "V'yitain David la'arnan b'makom shikli zahav mishkol sheish mios." That David Melech paid to Arnon, who's the non-Jew who owned it, for the place, golden shekels, and the weight of 600. So he bought the base of Mikdash, the land that was going to be eventually the base of Mikdash, for 600. Because the Ksuv and even the verse says, "V'yitain David es a gorin as a bakar b'kesef shikalim chamishim," and another verse says that he brought the threshing floor that was turned into the base of Mikdash and the cows, bulls for 50 shekel. So Hakate said, how do you reconcile that contradiction? Is that 550 or 600? Gova mikol shevet v'shevet chamishim. He collected from each tribe 50. Shein sheish mios, they added up to 600 total. Rabbi Omar Mishum Abba Yossi Bar Dostai. Rabbi Yehudah Nasi said the name of Yossi Bar Dostai. Bakar ve'etzim umakum mizbeach benun. The mizbeach and when he bought it, Arnon wanted to. He said to throw in the cows, the bulls, and all the vessels, the wooden vessels. So that you have just get a drink. So I don't know what I said. I'm going to throw in the wood and the wooden vessels and the cows. So you didn't want to take it for free. Sorry. So it's for the mizbeach itself and the place of mizbeach, the wood, the bulls. That was 50. And the rest of the base of mikdash, the rest of the place of the base of mikdash was 600. The verse says, "Vayomer Arona el David." Arona said to David, "Yikach vayal Adoni Amelech, should take and bring up as a sacrifice my master the king. And told me enough, whatever is good in your eyes. Habakar, see the cow, see the bulls for burnt offerings. Amargim, v'klei bakar, and these morgim, which are some kind of cattle equipment. Klei bakar and other cattle equipment. The eighth thing use that as what? Rava Amar. So it sounds like they're using these cattle vessels as wood on the mizbeach. So he said you should do it new. You see that in Obama that they used the wood. At least according to one opinion, they used this wood on the mizbeach. Rabbi Amalacha said, "We'll tell you, they're brand new. The my morigim, what are morigim? Omer Ula says mita shel turbal. It's a mita of bed of turbal. My mita shel turbal. What is a bed of turbal? Baya Iza the carcassa the shinin dishai. It's some kind of threshing equipment. It looks like a goat, and there are pegs in it, and you use it to thresh you use it to thresh. Amabai, micro. What does the verse mean? So what verse teaches that? It says, "Hine samticha lamorig charutz chadash baal pivios." Behold, I have made you like a new morig that with the charutz a cut morig that with sharp edges. Yeah. Mikrele Rava Lebre. Rava read to his son Rami Lekra Hadadi, and he said the contradiction between two verses. Kasav, the verse says, "Vayitin David la'Arnon." He gave to Arnon. One says 600. One says right. Vayikin David. He says 50. Okay, so how do you reconcile these two? Collect the 50 in each tribe, which turns into 600. Kashi and Dadi. There's still a contradiction. Pasam Kesef. Achazav. One plate verse says silver. One says gold. This is what it says. Govach Kesef b'shekel sheish meos zahav. So govach Kesef b'mishkel sheish meos zahav. That the weight of a golden coin and silver coin are not are not the same. So he collected was silver currency, but in the weight of 600 gold. Not the same, not the weight of 600 silver. It was the weight of 600 gold. It was the equivalent in silver. Not sure exactly how much that is, but whatever it was, that's the amount he paid. It was the weight in gold, not in the weight of silver. Okay, next we said, now in the time of the Mishkan, now we're back now. So that was pre-Mishkan. Now we're up to the Mishkan time. In the Mishkan time, we said, Kachim Kalim, the lighter holiness sacrifices, Nechal and B'chol Machane Yisrael, are eaten in the entire Jewish camp. The entire camp of the Midbar, that's where they eat the sacrifices, the lower levels holiness sacrifices. Amar Rav Huna. Huna says, B'chol Makomos Yisrael, all the places of the Jews, of Al Machane Zu, Have.
Any place in Michigan. Well, the Jews in the wilderness was in that area. A lot of states.
Okay, right, okay. So it was anywhere in the area. So Ezra challenged it. Remember, Nachman the Rav Huna. There were no camps in the Midbar. Batanya, but there's no halachic status of these places. But it says in the Brisa, Midbar, just like there was a camp in the Midbar. Kach Machane b'Yushalayim, so too there's a camp of Yerushalayim. Yerushalayim lahar bayis, from Yerushalayim to the Temple Mount, is Machane Yisrael. That's the equivalent of the places where the Israelites camped in the Midbar. The Har Bayis, the Shar Nicanor, from the beginning edge of Har Bayis to Shar Nicanor, that's the famous gates. The miracle happened to them. That's Machane Levia. That is the camp of the Levites. Anything more internal than that, that's as Israel, as Ekanim. That's the Machane Shechina. The Hain Kalaim Shevim, that's the equivalent of the Kalaim, the curtains in the Midbar. So you see that if we're learning out the permanent status of the different places from what happened in the Midbar, clearly there were camps in the Midbar. That Machane Yisrael stretched everywhere. Which what that means is that even when they're traveling, it still has the status of Machane Yisrael. Pshita, it's obvious. Manutim, what would you thought? If Suli Biyotze, you might think when they're traveling, it left where the camp was, so it would be possible. They could no longer eat it as soon as they start traveling, because the camp itself doesn't exist anymore, so it's considered it left the place of eating. So it's coming to teach us that that's not true. Why don't you say that's true? Amar Kra, the verse says, V'nasa ol moed, that the tent of meeting traveled. Even though it traveled, ol moed who? It's still called a tent of meeting. It's not, even though it's taken apart, it still has a status, the campus still exists. Tani Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai Omer. Rabbi Shimon said, Od acheres hayis. Od acheres haisa. There's another distinction in place. El Ezras Nashim, and it's the section of the Ezras Nashim. V'lo hayu onshin aleh, and there's no punishment for it. And there's a different level, and that the idea is that it's separate from, it's holier than the rest of the Temple Mount, but there's no punishment for going there. So the level of Tumah, so Rashi says it says in Kelim, says somewhere else what the difference is. That there's certain status, that you're not allowed to go there, but there's no, I believe there's no punishment if someone does go there, but there are people who are allowed to go on Temple Mount who are not allowed to go there. So there was Shiloh, and in Shiloh, lo hayu ela shnei machanot. There was only two of the three camps. Provide alone. You just said there are three lines. Now let's talk a little bit about what the distinction of three lines are. So there are different levels of Tumah. And so in Machane Shechina, which we said in temple was the Azara, the inner courtyard, that a regular Tamei person could not go. But a regular Tamei person could go in Temple Mount on Har Bayis. Someone who's called Tumah Yotzi La Migufo, someone who himself is a source of Tumah, could not go in Temple Mount. They had to be outside Temple Mount. But they could go in the city of Yerushalayim. But a Metzora had to be outside everything. So we have three different categories. We have, let's say, Tamei Meis, someone touches a dead person, or Sheretz, or Nevela, an animal that died. They could go on Temple Mount, but not to the temple, not into the courtyard. Then someone who's a Zav, Zava, Nida, Balkari, could not go to Temple Mount at all. And a Metzora could not go even to the city of Yerushalayim. So now I'm saying there's only two of the three. So which one of the three are you missing? Amar Rabba said, Mistaber, it's logical to Machane Levia, to the camp of the Levites, which is the middle one. Mihava, that one for sure was there. To Isakadek to Machane Levia Lohava, because if the middle one wasn't there, Nimsu Zavim Tamei Mesim Mishtachim Hutz Machane Achas. You find that someone who is a Zav and someone who touched a dead person is sent to the same place. Because someone who touched a dead person has to go outside the first camp. Someone who touched someone who's a Zav has to go outside the second camp. Second camp doesn't exist, then they're all in the same place. They can all go into the third camp. So there's the same place. The Torah Amra, and the Torah says, they should not contaminate their camps, plural. Ten machan lazeh, machan lazeh. Say give each one their own camp. A camp for this one, camp for that one. Amalei Rava. Rava said back, Elamai, what are you going to say? Machan Yisrael lo havai. The third camp wasn't there. Nimsu zav mitzorai mishtach in the makom echad. Then you find that the person who's zav and the person who has tzaras mitzorah, they're going to be sent to the same person. But Torah says, Badad Yeshiv, he should sit by himself. What does that mean? Shelo Yeshiv Tamei Acher Imo. That no other Tamei person should be in the same place as he is. So if you skip camp 3, then you're also in trouble. You can't skip camp 2, can't skip camp 3. And skip camp 1, that also would mean that 1 and 2 are the same place. So you can't skip any of the camps. Really, Kulu Tosahave. All 3 of them were there. What does it mean that there are only 2 camps? Liklita, for refuge. That they lost out on the status of refuge in Mishkan Shiloh. That they lost out, meaning, as we'll see, that they had a way, if someone kills someone by accident, then they're supposed to run away to the cities of refuge. In the Midbar, we're seeing now that one of the camps existed for the purpose of refuge. We're saying here the Machan Leviah did not count as refuge, meaning we said the Har Bayis, the Temple Mount, was equivalent of the Levi camp that did not have a status of a city of refuge. And whether in the Mishkan Shiloh, if someone ran to the Mishkan, that would not take refuge for them. Mikal, that implies though the Midbar Havai Kalta, that the Midbar, the camp of Levites, would provide refuge. The Kalta Machan Leviah, the camp of the Levites. He said, yes, it did. It says in the Bryce, if somebody lechal makom, I have made for you a place in your life. Makom, a place. Your place. So your place, meaning Hashem is talking to Moshe, saying, I have established a place, in your camp. Moshe was a Levi. Asher Yinu Shama, that someone can flee if he killed somebody by accident. Milamed, that teaches us Shemagalin b'Midbar, that there was a place of refuge in the Midbar. Lahechan Golin, where could they go? Machan Leviah, to the camp of Levites. Kan Amru, from this we say Ben Levi Jaharag, that if a Levi killed somebody by accident, Golin Plach LeBlach. He can't leave the camp of Levites, but he goes from one neighborhood to another neighborhood. But if he stayed put in his own section, Pilcho Kolto, then that provides for him. Bidi Evid, after the fact, it's okay. He's supposed to go to a different place, but if he didn't, then it still works. Mikra, what verse teaches us that he can stay in the same place? In his city of refuge, he should dwell. The city that took refuge on him already, and even though he's not leaving his home, then it still will provide refuge for him. Okay. It says, Baal Gilgal. They came to Gilgal, meaning the Mishkan Shiloh was destroyed in the time of Elia Cohen. Then, they fought a war with the Plishtim, decided to bring the Aron with them. The Aron got captured. That was the end. The Mishkan sank into the ground, disappeared, and they had no Mishkan. So the Mishnah said when it got to Gilgal, then Bamos were permitted, and various other halachas of it. We'll see. Now, what covenants will be brought at this stage now? So Tanabanim, the rabbis taught, Kol Nidar v'Nidav HaKarav Abama. Anything that was voluntarily brought as a neder or as an adava can be brought in Abama. Now, what's the difference between a neder and an adava? A neder is when someone takes responsibility. Said, I will bring a carbon of such and such a type. An adava is someone who says, this animal is a carbon of such and such a type. What's the difference? If someone says this animal is a carbon, he has a responsibility to do his best effort to bring this animal as a carbon. If that becomes impossible, the animal dies, he has no responsibility anymore. If someone says, I will bring a carbon, he took on himself to bring it. He sets aside, this is the animal I'll bring. Animal dies, buy another one out of pocket. That one dies, buy another one until you actually bring it. You accept upon yourself responsibility. So anything that can be made in either method of voluntary offering, that could be brought in Abama. Anything that cannot be voluntarily brought, In karva bama could not be brought on a bama. Mincha, a flower offering, the nazirus, and the sacrifice of a nazir, karev bama are brought on a bama. Now, what's interesting about a nazir is that normally you cannot bring a chatas or an asham. They're not voluntary offerings; they're required offerings. But a nazir, when he purifies himself, brings an asham, and you can voluntarily choose to be a nazir. So we're going to see there's a discussion: is an asham nazir? Is the asham of a nazir considered to be voluntary? It also happens to be if the nazir becomes tameh, he brings the chatas. But we don't. I don't think the Gemara is going to talk about that one. I don't remember talking about that one. All right. So mincha nazir is brought on a bama. Divrei Rei Meir. That's according to Rei Meir. Omrim lo karvu. Dachid ela olos ushamin. An individual cannot bring anything other than burnt offerings and peace offerings. Bavad only. Rabbi Yehudah only a third opinion. Rabbi Yehudah says kol tzibur vayachid makrivim ba'ol moed. Anything that the community and an individual can bring in the tent in the Mishkan, midbar that was in the midbar. Makrivim ba'ol moed shebegalgal. They brought in the equivalent in the main bama and what they had for a tent in Gilgal. Ma bein ol moed shebemidbar levein ol moed shebegilgal. What's the difference between the tent in the midbar to bring everything, the tent in Gilgal? Ol moed shebemidbar, the tent of the Mishkan in the midbar. Lo hayu bamos mataris. You're not allowed to bring a sacrifice outside at all. Ol moed shebegilgal, when they had the Mishkan in Gilgal, the altar, the main altar in Gilgal, hey bamos mataris. At that point, you could bring other sacrifices outside. Bama so shabush gago, and on the bama on the top of his roof, wherever he built it, ella olo shlamim. He only brought an ola and a shlamim. He did not bring anything else on that. And the main one, you could bring everything, but it is a private one. You can only bring ola and shlamim, burnt offering and peace offering. The rabbis say, "Kol tzibur makrim omoed shemidbar." Any offering that the community brought, adding one more. And the last opinion said offering that was brought. The rabbi said, sorry, rabbis added one more word. Anything the community brought in the midbar, we brought at the main altar in Gilgal. The Khan, I'm sorry, I skipped a word. Anything community brought in the midbar, they can bring in the tent in the wilderness in Gilgal. The Khan in both places, lo karvu yachid, the individual cannot bring ella olos shamim bavad. Cannot bring an ola shamim. They can only bring an ola shamim. Difference is, could an individual bring a sin offering on a bama? The third opinion said that an individual, anything that was brought in the midbar could be brought at a central bama, it's the main bama, which includes sin offerings. Then this opinion said you can only bring communal offerings. You cannot bring any private offerings. Sorry. Okay. Right. So the third opinion said private offerings were pinned at the central bama, and the fourth opinion says no, private offerings were not, but communal offerings can be brought at the bama, not just things that are voluntary, things that are obligatory, could still be brought at the central bama. First opinions agreed that you cannot bring anything that's a communal offering in the time of Gilgal. The third and fourth agree that you can bring communal, but they're arguing whether you're bring private ones at the central bama. Shimon says, "Af tzibur lo ikrivu el psachim yechovos like v'ul henzman." Even the community only brought obligatory offerings that are the Karban Pesach, which is interesting. Karban Pesach is a private offering and a public offering at the same time. It's somewhere in between the status of private and public. It's private because each person has their own responsibility. It's public because you have to do it as a group. And chovos kavur lehenzman, the sacrifices have a set time to bring. So most communal sacrifices have a set time. Ones that don't are communal sin offerings. Communal sin offerings can be brought whenever they happen, but there's no specific time to bring them. You bring them 20 years later, 70 years later, 100 years later, they still can't, as long as it's still alive, the community's still alive, you can bring them, you're supposed to bring them right away. You're not to delay for no purpose, but it's not like you missed the deadline. There's no deadline. So communal, today's carbon ola is the deadline of today. You can't bring today's carbon tomorrow. So that you could bring. But a communal sin offering, there's no specific deadline. You have to bring it while the community is alive. There's no deadline that you weren't allowed to bring. So now we have 5 opinions here. So, sorry, not 5, because some of the same names are quoted more than once. So there are 5 statements here, but Rabbi Meir said 2 of them, and the Chachamim say 2 of them. So Rabbi Meir said there's no mincha nazir on Obama. Chachamim say Rabbi Meir says mincha and nazir is on Obama. Rabbis say no, only ola and shlamim on a private Obama. Yehudah says, what talks next time of the communal Obama, says anything that they brought in the midbar you can bring a communal Obama. And the Chachamim say only the ones that are. It is 5 opinions. 2 of them are Chachamim, but anything that the community brought on the main one in the Mishkan, they can bring it on the main one in Gilgal. And Shimon says even the community only brought ones that have a set time. So Rabbi Meir was the first opinion. Rabbi Meir said you can bring and Nazir can bring his karbanos. You can bring a mincha on Obama. So what's the reason for Rabbi Meir? The Amakra, the verse said, "Lo sasin cannot do kachol asher anachnu osim po hayom." Cannot do everything. They're talking about when you get to Eretz Yisrael, you're not to bring all the karbanos. You can't do the way we're doing it now. You can't bring everything we can bring now. They brought everything. Amalei Moshe Yisrael. Moshe said to the Jewish people, "Ki ailisu le'eretz." When you go to Eretz Yisrael, Yashus, it says what you can do is Isha Yashar Beinav, what is good in your eyes, whatever is good in your eye. I mean, anything you voluntarily bring, Takrivu, that you can bring. Anything that you voluntarily say, I want to bring this, that you can bring. Chovos lo Takrivu. You cannot bring obligatory offerings. Minchos and Naziros, a flower offering and a carbon Nazir. Yashus Nenu are voluntary. You can voluntarily say, I want to bring a flower offering. I want to be a Nazir, and if you become a Nazir, then you're voluntarily bringing the carbon of a Nazir. For Banan, it says, Ein mincha b'bama. You can't bring a mincha on a bama. Doesn't explain right here how we know that, but you cannot bring a mincha on a bama. And we'll say, on Kufya tests, another 2 days, in Kufya tests, we'll learn out how. So 2 more dots, we'll get, Regulations should be back by then, and so that's where you see how we know that. But Naziros, and when it comes to Nazir, it's an obligatory. Once you become a Nazir, you have to bring the carbon. It's not voluntary anymore. So Omer Shmuel says Machlok is arguing about Chatas v'Asham, but the Chatas and Asham and Nazir. But Olos v'Shlamim divrei kol Yashers nenu. Everyone agreed that the Ola and Shlamim that a Nazir brings the carbon. So Ola, Shlamim, and an Asham. And then when he becomes Tameh, in the process, he brings a Chatas. So they're arguing about can you bring Asham and Chatas, and even though normal Asham and Chatas, you cannot bring on Obama, but these ones are considered voluntary because they became a Nazir voluntarily, so those ones you could bring. That's what they're arguing about. But Ola Shlamim, of course you can bring. You can voluntarily bring an Asham, Ola Shlamim at any point, so you can bring them of a Nazir. A Nazir is no worse than voluntarily bringing it. His obligation to bring an Ola Shlamim is no worse than his regular obligation. If someone says, I want to bring an Ola. They were brought. Mosif Rabbah says a challenge to that. Chazeh v'shok, the obligation to give the chest and the thigh to a Kohen, or chumas lachmei toda, and the obligation to give the 1/10 of the bread of the carbon toda. Nohayim bama gedol, apply on the main bama, ve'in nohayim bama kitana, and do not apply on a small bama. Ve'ilu azro b'sheila, but the cooked arm of the Nazir, Shirei does not mention it. Does not say that one does not apply on a small bama. But by logic would indicate it should not apply on a small bama. So Iyamart, if you said Bishlam, it would be fine if you say Ola Shlamim Pligi. If they're arguing about the Ola Shlamim of Nazir, that one opinion says the Nazir could bring a Shlamim, one opinion says the Nazir cannot bring a Shlamim. So Hamani, who's the one who left out, did not say that this doesn't apply. That you don't have to give the arm of the Shlamim. Rabbanani, that's the rabbis who say that you can't bring it at all. That the Nazir can't bring an Ola Shlamim at all. So it's not relevant. It's not that the law of bringing the arm doesn't apply. It's that the law doesn't apply at all. You don't bring the carbon at all, so of course you don't bring the arm. So we don't have to mention that you don't bring the arm because you don't bring the carbon at all. You don't have to make an exception. But everybody agrees you bring the ol and shlamim. Hamani, who's the one who says that you bring the shlamim and you give the arm? No one says that. If it was said, that statement that we said earlier, it was said, here's the way it should be said. Amar Shmuel said, Machlokas be'ol shlamim. They're arguing about the ol and shlamim. When it comes to the chatas and asham, everyone agrees that they are considered obligatory offerings below karve, and they are not brought on a bama at all. At least not on the private bama for sure. So once someone says a nazir, now it's an obligation on him, even though he chose to be a nazir. But even the burnt offering and peace offering of a nazir are considered to be obligatory offerings, therefore cannot be brought on a bama. Amar, a quote from what we said earlier. The rabbis say, Kol tzibur, any sacrifice to this, the tzibur makriven would bring, but in the tent, they could bring on a bama. What's the reasoning of the rabbis? The verse says, Isha yashar beinav yaseh. A man, what is fit in his eyes should bring. Ish yashur sud likruv. If for an individual, then there's a limitation; they can only bring the ones that are fit in his eyes. Chovos, but obligatory offerings, lo likruv, he cannot bring. That's by an individual. But sibur, the community, fil chovos likruv. Even the obligatory ones can bring. It says a man can't bring an obligatory offering, only what's fit in his eyes. But that's by a private citizen. Community has no such limitation. Rabbi Yehudah would tell you. You can see that Yashar, Rabbi Yehudah is the one who says that a private person cannot bring these karbanos, but in community also they can bring everything. So how does Rabbi Yehudah explain that? Ksiv Hayashar. It says what's good in your eyes, and when it says in his eyes, Hudik Ksiv. Aval Baba Gedola, that's now the proper is one it's enough when it's his own space. But in a public communal bama, those could be brought anywhere. So El Aksiv Ish, what does it say for the word Ish? It says it was good in his eyes. A place that's his eyes, meaning his own private place, that's where he can only bring what's good in his eyes, good for him. But a communal place, the whole thing doesn't apply. Now what to do with the word Ish? Usually it says a man. Law of the name isn't to say that ish yashu likruv, that a man can bring what's good in his eyes. Hachovas lo likruv, can't bring what's obligatory. No kikasiv ish, when it says ish, a man, hakshir zar, to say that a non-Kohen can bring. So, zar, you want to say you learn out zar. Mi vazar Kohen es adam al mizbeach Hashem. Nafka. We learn out from the verse that says the Kohen should sprinkle blood on the mizbeach Hashem. We see the limitation of Kohen only applies in the Mizbeach Hashem, not in private Mizbeach. We already learned that from there. We don't need it from the word Ish. What would I have thought from that verse? Liboy, Kaddish B'choros. I would think you still need the sanctity of a firstborn. Can be carried like before the Torah was given, before the Mishkan was set up. Kamash Milan, Hachamim, that's where the rabbis taught us. So the Kamash Milan, that's where it taught us that you need the word ish to say any man can bring it. When it says Hachamim, the opinion of the sages, Haidu Tanakam, that's the same as the first opinion. They all agree not bring communal offerings. Amar Rav Papa, Papa says, Karvu Nisachim b'midbar ikbenayu. What they're arguing about is where they brought libations in the midbar. So according to the first rabbis, they did not bring libations. It's only the Ol and Shlamim itself, but nothing else. The last opinion says that the communal offerings are brought, even bring libations on a bama. It's 54. Okay, we should probably just stop here. Okay. Even though I was late, I'm sorry again. I was late. We still got an amud and a half. Now you're two behind, but you have one amud that's really short. So you're about to tomorrow. You'll only be if you do one daf tomorrow, you'll only be an amud behind.
You do well today.
right? If you do, is that right? If you do a daf tomorrow, then you'll be tomorrow. You're supposed to finish tomorrow morning. So you do a daf tomorrow, you'll be an amud behind. So you're basically an amud behind. You do a daf and a half tomorrow, you're done. Is that right? Daf and a half. Yeah, daf and a half left. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.